Hello and welcome to Off the Roll. I'm your host, Troy Hirschman. This is episode 17. It's hard to believe that I've been doing this for over a year now. So 17 episodes in a year is probably not as many as some people do, but it's worked out well for me. So on this episode, we have Bill Bean. We're going off the Ball State track a little bit. Bill was the longtime head athletic trainer, director of sports medicine at the University of Utah. 32 years at Utah. He's been retired for 12. But Bill was the director of sports medicine when I was a graduate assistant at Utah, and Bill's highly respected in the athletic training and physical therapy circles for the work that he's done over the years. And great conversation with Bill today. Brings up a lot of great memories, but he's had a very diverse athletic training journey. And it's going to be great to talk to him, or was great to talk to him about that journey a little bit. So we'll go off the roll with Bill Bean. Welcome to Off the Roll. I'm your host, Troy Hirschman. We're talking to Mr. Bill Bean today. Bill was a longtime athletic trainer and physical therapist at the University of Utah. How many years, Bill?
Well, I actually retired after 32.
32 years, yeah. So a long time. He's seen a lot of stuff. He's had an incredible career. Has spent, the last 12 years being retired and helping out with stuff part-time. But so welcome to the podcast, Bill.
Well, thanks. This is all brand new to me. I'm really kind of dating myself. My wife, she came in. She said, "I'll help you out with this." And I'm thinking, because she's done it a number of times, and so I knew that I would need to have superior guidance.
Well, that's a lot of us, for that matter. I mean, we've all got somebody behind us helping fix things that we usually screw up, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So I'm going to ask you the question I've asked everybody that is at the beginning of this podcast, but what got you interested in athletic training? How'd you get started? First of all, where are you from originally? Where's your hometown at?
Originally, I'm from Rexburg, Idaho. I went to high school there, and then I ended up going to Utah State for my first bachelor's degree.
Okay.
I don't think that my story is unlike a lot of athletic trainers. You're part of a team. Maybe you're not a good enough athlete to make the team, and yet you got all your buddies on it, and so everybody wants to be together. And I had a wonderful coach in high school that, taught me to take an ankle, and he said, "I want you to be part of the team here." And so, I mean, it went from there to, he made a special trip from Rexburg, Idaho to Logan, Utah, to go to the athletic department there and tell them they should hire me as a student athletic trainer.
Wow.
Because I just had that torch.
Yeah.
I knew it, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. There wasn't anything else. I wasn't going to be a plumber, or I wasn't going to be anything other than, I just wanted to be an athletic trainer. And so I just couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah.
And then fortunately, they brought me on board there as kind of an apprentice. And as you know, and those of us that are a little older in the profession, things were all different then.
Yeah.
Our education, our workload, our responsibilities, our staffing. It was up to you. I mean, I remember as a freshman in college, there was something that came up where the head athletic trainer couldn't go with the men's basketball team to a tournament in Oklahoma City. Well, guess who went? Mr. First year in college dude went. And it was invaluable.
Yeah.
I mean, you learn on the run, and you surrounded yourself with enough good people that if things get a little bit squeaky, you've always got somebody to go to.
Right.
To help you out.
Yeah. So who was at Utah State at that time when you went there? Who was the head athletic trainer?
Well, when I first went there were actually three of them there during my period of time through.
Okay.
That, and it was Dick Melhart, who Dick is kind of a Northwestern guy. He just passed away, unfortunately. But he was the head trainer at Washington State.
Okay.
And then he then got out and went to PA school. And then I think he got a job and got back into athletic training at the University of Idaho.
Okay.
And then he got caught up in a terrorist activity because he was giving speeches for the United States Information Bureau, and he was in the Middle East. And
oh my goodness!
They captured an airplane with families on it, and he was in that plane.
Oh my goodness! Wow!
And they shut the lights out on him, and he said he was in that, and it was so quiet that even the babies wouldn't cry.
Wow!
It was just that kind of an atmosphere, and
yeah.
And he finally he said it's time to show a set of testicles here, and so
yeah.
He was by the escape door, and he said, we got to get out of this airplane. So I don't know if he distracted him for enough time. He got the door open, started getting people out, and then all hell broke loose where the terrorists knew they had lost.
Yeah.
They started getting out of the airplane. They weren't hurting anybody, but quite a story from him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That is a story.
Yeah. But he was my first mentor.
Yeah.
At Utah State.
Okay. So what did you do? I mean, as a student, you talked about going with men's basketball. What else were you doing at Utah State as a student back then?
Well, as you did the same thing as I did, everything.
Yeah.
You worked in basketball, you used swimming, you worked wrestling, you worked the broom handle, around you just
yeah.
You're in that personality mode of I just want to get it done. I love this stuff and I want to be around it. And I don't need other people to do it. I can do it, and I just want to learn. And I remember one of the older student trainers, he came in, he wanted to explain to me a little bit about what ultrasound was. Well, I thought you'd turn up the volume and you'd have dual speakers, and I said, I really want to know what this is all about, short of just turning it on.
Yeah.
So he told me what he knew, gave me a book, and that kind of set that light bulb off where you get hungry and you want to find out.
Yeah. I've talked to some other athletic trainers in that era when they were going to college and stuff, and they were doing some other stuff too. Actually, some of them were, I just did a podcast, the last one I did that a high school athletic trainer in Indiana here that went to Ball State. He was on the men's volleyball team or as a practice player because he just needed something else to do. Were you doing anything else in college that was outside of that, or were you just in the athletic training room all the time?
Well, the latter 2 years, because of Vietnam, I had a draft number that I was going to be on my way.
Yeah.
And so I enrolled in ROTC.
Okay.
I became a member of that group, and so that kept me a little busy.
Yeah.
And then my last 2 years, I was in that group, and then I went on to active duty after my undergraduate degree. So that, and then I was in a fraternity, and I had, I lived that social life, which I totally loved. And as you know, and I certainly know, is the whole fun, not the whole fun, but a majority of the fun that we had during our mentorships and our early education was the camaraderie with our colleagues and the athletes. That's what was fun.
Yeah.
You'd learn as much as you could, but everybody was laughing. Everybody's having fun at the training room.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing that, it's a lot of people ask you, like, why do you do it? Why do you do it and not get paid a lot of money? Why do you work the crazy hours that you do, all this stuff? And you nailed it. I mean, it was because there was definitely a camaraderie amongst each other that you felt like you were working hard, but you were having a great time and you really didn't want it to end. You were tired, you were ready to go home sometimes, but you wanted to come back the next day and kind of start it all over again.
Yeah.
And I think that was the biggest thing that probably appealed to me about it, was the fact that you felt like you belonged somewhere. And and for somebody that wasn't playing sports like I was, and not involved in those things as a team, I always looked at it, the athletic trainers were my team, and students, graduate assistants, staff, whatever it might be. And so I get that. You're right. That's what made it fun. So you're at Utah State. You said you went to active duty. How long did you do that for?
I was on active duty for 2 years.
Okay.
In the Army, and then I was on inactive reserves for 4 years.
Yeah.
And I was really, war was really a test for me, because I lived in Carmel. We had this beach house, and we played racquetball every day at noon. I mean, it was just a bitch. And I got the branch I wanted. I wanted to try to stay medical, so I got into the Medical Service Corps. So I worked in an VAC hospital, and so I kind of kept my finger in it. And then there was a soccer team in Monterey that I'd go on weekends. I didn't have to work. I'd go volunteer. Just wanted to be around it, you know.
Yeah.
And then after I got out of the military, then I came back, and Dick Melhart reared his head again, and he called me up and said, "Listen, my full-time assistant's leaving to go to graduate school." He said, "Would you be interested?" And I said, "Of course I'd be interested."
Yeah.
This was in like June, and I'm in Pullman, Washington in July. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to go for doubles.
So what year is this about then?
That would have been 1974.
Okay.
And so I started up there, and then Dick was at Washington State then.
Yeah.
And I was there the first year, and then the second year, another mentor I had at Utah State was in professional basketball, and he called me up and said, "Hey, listen," he was the player personnel director at the Utah Stars here in Salt Lake City in the ABA.
Yeah.
And he called me up and he said, "Hey, listen, would you be interested in being the athletic trainer for the ABA basketball team here in Salt Lake?" And I said, "God, I'd really be interested." And he goes, "Give me your resume." Well, I sent him his resume as fast as I could get it to him.
Yeah.
And he called me up that day that he got it. And it was the first thing that came out of his mouth. He says, "How long is it going to take you to get to Salt Lake?" I got the job,
Yeah.
And it's off to the races.
And away you get. That the ABA, that was kind of the Wild West of professional leagues back then. I mean, did you realize what you were getting yourself into when you were heading down there?
Well, no. Ignorance is bliss. I mean, it was wonderful. I had a wonderful time. It was such a good experience because, back then, you set up the hotels, you set up the food, you set up the airline tickets, and you took care of all your guys. And so it's not like you have moss growing underneath your feet.
Right.
You'd stay really busy. But we did a lot of traveling. I mean, you're on the road probably 3-4 times a week. You're gone someplace. So I totally enjoyed it. But I did realize that I loved athletic training, and I wanted to get back in the academic setting. I loved professional sports because I wanted to get a flavor of it. And my third goal is I wanted to, at some point in my career, is to work in the Olympics.
Okay.
And fortunately, I got all three of those taken care of.
Yeah.
And so I was just lucky.
Yeah. So, I've gotten to know David Craig really well. The last 15 years, doing different things with David. And he would tell stories like, you know, you walk in the locker room at halftime and guys are drinking beer and smoking cigarettes and stuff in the ABA, or they're showing off their guns that they brought to the arena. You didn't see any of that stuff, did you?
Oh, I sure did. And in fact, I wish I could remember the guy's first name. His last name is Brown. He's from Indiana.
One of it is Roger Brown.
I think it was Roger Brown.
Yeah.
He was picked up by the Stars.
Okay.
And he came in and because he was a constable. However, the world he got that, I don't know. And he's sitting in the locker room and we're all just sitting there chatting, you know, and here comes a pistol. I'm going, what the hell you got a pistol for in here? Oh, I'm a constable in Indiana. I'm going, well, you're sure not going to use that too much in Salt Lake City, I don't think. But it was the Wild West show.
Yeah.
Everybody had a good time, but you know, it was just that time in that era.
Yeah. Did you room with the head coach on the road? Because that's what David had to do.
Fortunately, I did not.
Yeah.
I had my own room.
Oh, well, good. Yeah.
And so that was really good. It's I remember though Tom Nasalki was one of the coaches towards the latter part of my career, and
yeah,
and he and I used to play racquetball all the time, and so we played, and then we had our game, and we got beat, and so we thought let's go to the bar and get a beer, and so we went in there, sat down, and Tom looked at me and he says, you know, we're going to do this quite a bit through the season. Why don't we do this? Let's run a tab. You pay for your beer and I'll pay for mine. And I'm thinking, you cheap son of a bitch. You're making 3 times what I'm making.
Exactly.
And you won't buy me a beer. I'll buy you one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No. So interesting personalities.
Yeah, and you know, David tells stories that so Slick Leonard was the head coach at the time for the Pacers, and he would to blow out instead of having a beer to blow off steam, he'd want to wrestle. And so David was his roommate on the road. Yeah. And he said
Dave's not that big a guy either.
No. And Dave he goes, Slick would want to wrestle, and he just burn off his energy after a game on the road. And he goes, I mean, I'd have to learn some moves and fight back and all this other stuff. And he goes, but Slick usually got the best of me in the end. But
oh, that's invaluable.
Yeah. So yeah, he's one of them that's going to be on the podcast too, because he's got tons and tons of stories as well from his career.
I bet he does.
Yeah. But
he was in the league a long time.
35 years. Yeah.
And that was ABA and NBC.
NBA, yeah. I just saw him last Saturday, and we were talking about some stuff, and I said I need to get you on, and he said I'll do it. You just let me know when. I'll do it. So,
well, I don't know if he'll remember me. It was a long time ago, but tell him hello for me.
I will. I definitely will. Yeah. So from the Stars, where do you go from there then?
Well, the Stars folded. You know, the ABA went.
Oh, yeah.
And so our team lost its franchise.
Okay.
And I remember Bill Daniels was the owner of the team, and he was out of Denver. And he came in just at a shoot around, the start of a shoot around. We had a game that night. And he came over to me. He said, Bill, get the players and the coaches in the locker room. And I'm looking at him, and his eyes are all bloodshot, and he's looked like hell warmed over, you know. I said, yeah. You're the boss, dude. So I grabbed everybody and got them into the arena or into the locker room. And I said, Mr. Daniels wants to talk to all you guys. So he sat down. The first thing he said, we're done. I got to shut her down. I said, I don't have any more money to run this organization. We're going to, transfer some guys from here to St. Louis, and and
right.
I'll do what I can do to help you out, but this operation is closed doors.
Yeah. Wow.
And so they shut her down, and then I'm kind of scratching my head because I knew I didn't want to do anything other than athletic training.
Right.
So fortunately, the guy that was the general manager of the Utah Stars was a big Ute. He was an All-American basketball player.
Okay.
He was the general manager of the Utah Stars. Well, they were grooming him in Salt Lake to become the athletic director at the University of Utah. And so he was a vice president for a while, and this and that and that and this. And so all of a sudden he became the athletic director. And he, about 2 days after he was appointed, he said, "Bill, I want to see you. Come on in." So I went into his office. He goes, "You want to be my head athletic trainer?" I said, "Yeah, of course I want to." And he says, "You're my guy."
Wow.
And I tell this story to everybody that listen, including my sons. Who my youngest son has just completed his doctorate in physical therapy, and he's also an ATC.
Yeah.
And I said, "Don't step on anybody."
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, there's somebody in that circle that you're going to want to have help you. And if you treat them right, they're going to treat you right. And this is the way that guy was. I mean, he was just a genuine guy.
Yeah.
You know, I'd have never wanted it any different than it was. But he was my boss at the University of Utah for probably 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then when I was there, I really wanted, because I taught the physical therapy program as well, and I really enjoyed doing that. And so I talked to the director of the PT program here at the University of Utah, and I asked him, I said, "Is there any chance that I could get my physical therapy degree sort of on a unique pattern, because I still have to work?" And he goes, "We'll get her done." So
Wow.
and then it was the baccalaureate program. It was 3 years or 2 years, and I took 3 years. So I got my physical therapy degree, and then I decided, because one of my team physicians said, "Now you have choices." He said, "If you, as an athletic trainer, in his opinion, he says, your choices are limited. I mean, you can be an athletic trainer, but you're going to, where you're going to work and everything else is all going to be kind of similar.
Yeah.
With this, you'll have that option. You can go do something else, which you may not want to do," which I didn't want to go do.
Right.
But I still had it. And so, I kind of had that in my back pocket. So it was sort of, it was a little bit of a comfort zone, I think, in having it. But then now you look at the profession, as you know as well as I do. There are so many of the students that go through athletic training programs that go somewhere else. They're either PAs or PTs, or, I mean, I was looking at the list of your class just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
And just a little bit under half of your class, graduating class, went on to get advanced degrees in something
else.
PA, dentistry, physical therapy,
right.
And now it's I think it's getting even more impacted by DPT programs.
Yeah.
Even though they're expensive to get into. It's a 3-year program. So there are options out there, but my take is, know all you can know about athletic training before you take that step.
Yeah.
Because once you're in there, you're locking yourself in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you do it, make sure you love it as well as you can.
No. Yeah, especially and now with these entry-level master's programs, these kids they're going to have it's kind of flip-flopped a little bit in the aspect they have an undergraduate degree in exercise science or biology or whatever, but then they're going into these entry-level master's programs. Like that's what we have now. And I mean, you are kind of locked in to that situation unless you want to go another 3 years and get your doctorate of PT or a PA, which is going to be another 2 to 3 years too. And it just, you're right. I mean, and I think things are trying to get better a little bit from a pay scale and um work-life balance. That's kind of a key word now with stuff too. But um they don't we don't have a lot of people that want to get into the college setting anymore. That's the thing. We've basically flipped our staff this year, with the exception of maybe 3 people. We've turned it over, and some people have left for better jobs at the college setting or a clinical setting. It seems like here in Indiana, the hospital based outreach jobs they're upping their game pay scale wise. So a lot of the universities can't pay what these hospitals are paying, and so therefore we got people jumping ship to go work at an outreach high school job. So some of them have gotten like a $10,000-$15,000 raise right off the bat, and so those kids that are coming out of the intro masters that's what they're expecting, and so when they see these college jobs, they're just not interested, and it's
they don't want to work 7 days a week.
Right, exactly. That's the other thing too. Yeah, they don't want to work 7 days.
Summer.
Yeah,
We never had to do when we were younger.
No, the summer I'm busier. I'm as busy in the summer anymore working basketball than I've in the last, since they probably 4 years since they passed this legislation. They get like 8 hours a week, and then you throw a foreign trip in there too. Then they get 10 practices beyond that, and then it's like you might as well just keep going. I might as well just like take a week off before school starts, and there you go. But I think that's a trend that's definitely, it just seems like every time I look at an athletic training staff at the college level, they're all really young people. There's not really any old sage guys that are still around, because they've either said, I can go make a lot more money working at a high school level job, working for a hospital, or I can just go do something else, or I can get out of it altogether. I mean, the head trainer at Akron, a guy named Bill Drotty, probably a little bit younger than me, left it all together to go work logistics for Amazon this past spring. Just said, I'm leaving, I'm out.
He doubled his income.
Yeah. So anyway,
it's a crazy deal. And and I was thinking about it this morning when I was talking to one of my sons, the one that's now PT. I said, how do you advise the youth on a career? I mean, you can tell them all these things you and I are talking about, but until they test the water, they don't know.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they're in there busting hump, at 6 a.m. every day, and nobody there to help you with water for double days.
Oh yeah.
And it's all that's another deal.
Yeah.
And but what do you tell them? No, don't do it. You don't like it. Maybe you do like it. I don't know.
Yeah, I've had to say, just make sure you go in with your eyes wide open. You know what you're going to see, and it'll be up to you. Whether you feel like that's a pathway for you to go on, or what you want to do and stuff, rather than kind of get caught off guard and then get bitter about it. And so you try to paint a picture, but I haven't had a student in 3 years. Because they're all sending them someplace else. And that was kind of my choice, because I wasn't getting enough time with them to really have an opportunity to teach them anything. So, but when the ones would come in for other athletic trainers as, clinical preceptors, I would say, what are you learning? What are you figuring out? And a lot of times it wasn't about athletic training. It was like, I didn't realize I was going to have to be here, 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours, sometimes like that. They come in the day of a game, and they're coming in, the game's at 7 o'clock, and they're coming in at 10 a.m. so they can set up for shoot around, those types of things. So I said, yeah, that's part of it.
I thought was hard when, especially the last couple of years of when I was working full time, is it got to the point that there's so much pressure from coaches. With your athletes that are hurt, they want answers now.
Yeah.
So sometimes you miss that opportunity to give your student a learning opportunity.
Yeah.
Where there's a situation that's really a teaching moment, you can't take it. because you got to get answers right away for the coach. And this poor student sitting there, glazed over, they don't know what the hell's going on. And you like to try to help them out, but all of a sudden now you got reports to do, you got this, you got that.
Yeah.
Is it a cop out? I don't know. Maybe it is a cop out, but it's reality.
Yeah. No, it is. It is. Well, so you end up you're starting out at Utah. You get yourself through the PT program in a very unconventional way, but you got through it. Like you said, we made it. They made it happen, right?
Yeah.
and you got an immediate. Did you get an immediate pay raise as soon as you got your PT degree at Utah?
Very small. It's a typical administrator thing, which we've all been through.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, we're gonna hook you up, dude. Once you get there, you get this degree, we're gonna give you X amount of money more and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Here comes your first check. Well, Aaron now hasn't cleared accounting yet. And all of a sudden you go in and you go, God, this has been awesome. I have a brand new T-shirt for the next year. Because you just don't see it.
Yeah. I got some new initials behind my name. I'm not sure if
I don't know what they mean.
Pay for itself.
Well, just like Nancy, who's a nurse, and she's a retired military nurse and a National Guard or a reserve nurse. If it weren't for her income and my income and our extra teaching, that we all do, to try to get a little bit more going on, and then I had a little side physical therapy thing that I did.
Yeah.
If we didn't have all those things going, our lifestyle would have been different.
Yeah.
Because you just can't do it. And I think about Trevor, at our place.
Yeah.
I think, what does he have? 7 kids.
He definitely is a traditional LDS.
He is. and there are none better than that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, Trevor is he's the salt of the earth, and he'll bust hump for you.
Yeah.
But I mean, he feels the grinder. Yeah. And especially this past year, as all you guys probably did. Yeah. Now you couple in drug testing because of the COVID.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just more and more stuff thrown at you.
Yeah. Yeah, there definitely is more stuff. And we were just going through, I mean, we were scrambling this week because we had guys that couldn't come up with their sickle cell testing results. And now they're requiring, everybody has to be tested. And so we were working out with our health center to get them over there to get them tested because, they just couldn't. And again, they're on this, like I talked about with the director of basketball operations. Most of our guys it's along the socioeconomic lines where they just don't know. They were born in a hospital, but that's about all they know. And they can't find their results. They don't know who to contact, or medical records are gone or whatever. And so we just got them tested, and now we're in compliance. But that's just one more thing that we have to worry about to do. And whether it makes sense or not, it doesn't matter. That's the rule. So you got to get it done. And it certainly does add more to our plates administratively from that standpoint. There's been a few times, and during the pandemic, when we were still trying to go stuff and do things. And I'm like, I wish I could just treat an ankle sprain. I wish I could just do that instead of worry about all this other crap, So, yeah. So you also taught at Utah when your time there. Who were some of your more interesting, fun, or favorite students that you taught classes to?
Oh, I think that they're all unique. Every one of them, you included them. We've all had just a great time together. I can't remember any animosity among anybody. There were always times where somebody got pissed off, but then about 10 minutes later, everybody's laughing. Yeah. I used to walk out of the athletic training room, which you would remember because it's now gone, different stairway out the field. These kids would have things all fixed up where they'd have a 5-gallon cooler of ice water at the top of the stairs. and they'd coordinate when I'd go out on the practice field, so they could dump all that water on me. You know, and I'm just thinking, I don't know that they let guys do that anymore. You know?
No. There would be some kind of complaint made. Yeah, I remember when I was there as a GA that and we could do a whole podcast on Price in itself. but I can't think of the kid's name now, but I remember, I think Brad Weather and Kent Hurt, we had radios, and that kid wanted to bring out Gatorade every day to the football field. And so we had radios, and Brad had gotten up on the roof there at the complex there at Price with a cooler of water. And I think Ken had marked an X on the sidewalk, and that kid comes wheeling that cart out there, and I'm on the radio, and I said, okay, do it. And the poor kid, it was so perfect. You could see the water coming over the roof, but the poor kid didn't realize it was going to hit him in any second. and nowadays it'd have probably got 1 million views on YouTube because it was so perfect and so awesome. But that poor kid got drenched, and it was just, yeah.
Those are really fun times.
I
mean, you know, I don't, like you said, I don't think we can do that now.
No.
But we certainly have had some fun doing it.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that with Rex and Tony and Neil. They had an equipment manager, a guy here named Dave Plum, and he had cerebral palsy. But they were Dave and those three guys were going back and forth on each other, and we were laughing about that off the podcast later on, that would have been a nightmare for human resources to deal with now because there was so much stuff going on between them. I mean, you know, one time one of the basketball managers, and we didn't talk about this, but had gotten like some kind of, you know, where they used to call up, you know, sex talk or whatever, and they got it lined up. So when they called Dave and they transferred the call over, and there was some chick on the other end of the line talking to Dave in his office. He didn't realize what was going on. He thought it was somebody calling him. Yeah. So, I mean, just stuff like that. And yeah, that would have, nowadays, there's no way. There's just no way. Yeah.
No, just, I mean, the sensitivity of it all. I mean, you know, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but I mean, you can't use the wrong word, you can't touch the wrong body part. I mean, even though it is 180 degrees away from being any kind of a sexual innuendo,
right?
But if it's interpreted by the recipient as being a sexual gesture, you're done.
Yeah.
Not only are you going to be penalized, you're more than likely you're going to get your ass fired.
Yeah.
And never get another job.
Yeah. No, and I think that we're all aware of that, and the old adage of do no harm very much is the case of what we're trying to do, particularly with the student athletes. But you do have to pay attention a lot more. Your interactions with student athletes, or even, you know, other students, you just have to be aware of those things. And in some cases, it's all made us a little bit better, you know, in some ways, but in other ways, where we would do stuff for the sake of just fun, we just don't do anymore. And you know, that's unfortunately lost in some ways with that. There was no malice intended. It was just, you know, we're having fun with you, you're having fun with us, and you just can't do it. So but what, you know, a couple of things I would so in your time, 32 years, you had a lot of head coaches. You had a lot of assistant coaches. What are some of the more interesting stories that you can tell about some of your head coaches, or even assistant coaches for that matter?
Oh, as you know, they're all so unique.
Yeah.
You know, because they all have such interesting personalities, and the guy that you worked with here at the U as a graduate assistant, I don't know that there's any coach during that period of time for a graduate student to get their feet wet than the guy.
Yeah.
Your skills were truly tested.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
I mean, I don't think it would have been anybody more difficult to work with. Not that he didn't do a good job, excuse me, good job, but he was a challenge. And to this day, I've told many people, I said, we tried to keep Troy here.
Yeah.
When he was offered the job back in Indiana, I think you went right back to Ball State, didn't you?
I went back to St. Joseph's College, which is a Division II school, no longer in existence.
Oh, gone.
They closed down. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I remember asking you if you could stay because we wanted to keep you, and everybody was trying to keep you here.
Yeah.
But you knew where your life was, and you would raise a family and the whole thing, and so, but it finds its way.
Yeah, it was hard. It was hard to do that, believe it or not, because of you, and even the relationship I had with Greg there for at the end was good.
Yeah.
But the thing is that I just don't know if I could have sustained that. I mean, that type of pressure, even for a younger person, would have been hard to sustain, and I think that showed, in the amount of people that stayed there for a while. It was, I can't, obviously, it's funny. Scott Kinner's the, director of sports medicine at Wyoming now. so, Scott, Scott came back. His son goes to Bowling Green, and he came back for a visit last spring. And we were talking about, he goes, I love my time at Utah. Bill was awesome. Deb was awesome. Gerald was awesome. Everybody was awesome. He goes, I just had that year of gymnastics. and I said, well, it wasn't everybody, but
it was something.
Yeah. But that's the thing. It was going to be hard.
Oh yeah. I mean, it came with the turf.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a demanding dude, but I tell you, the guy that I thought was really, really kind of, I want to say fun, but I'm not sure if that's the right word, was Majerus.
Oh, yeah.
Rick Majerus, as you know, I mean, he came from a different mold. I mean, I'm not just sure there are many coaches any better than he is. And I've never been around a guy that is so original in comments. I remember there was one time I was driving home from work, and they had Rick Majerus show on, and I wanted to listen to it. And so I had it on the radio, and the announcer goes to Majerus, because Majerus is always heavy, and he said, "Hey Rick, I heard you're losing some weight. Rumor has it you lost 10 pounds." Kind of goes quiet on the radio for a second, and then all of a sudden he says, "Yeah, me losing 10 pounds is like throwing 2 deck chairs off the Queen Mary."
Yeah.
But I thought, who else would say that?
I just I was kind of organizing some stuff on my desk today, and I do my I call it my yearly kind of cleanup of stuff, papers I've tossed and on my desk in a shelf or something like that, and I found this buried in this pile of papers was this article that a guy named Doug Zielinski, he used to be a column writer here in Muncie, and he was writing back in, I think, when did he pass away? 2013, 2014. He had written a column about Rick, and to open it up, the article, he said that he had one time done an interview with Rick, and he sets it up like he walks in the locker room of the old gym and walks into Rick's office, it's in the it's a staff locker room, and there must have been a table in the staff locker room, a training table or treatment table or something, because he said that Tony was in there and he was getting ready. He had all his little tools out, and he was going to shave his calluses, Rick's calluses on his feet. And he said, Rick comes, Tony goes, he'll be right out. He's in the shower. And he goes, I thought he was like going to put a pair of shorts on or something like that. No, he hops up on the treatment table, flips his towel off. He's laying there buck naked, and Tony just starts going to work on his calluses. And he goes, Rick goes, are you good with this? Can we do this interview? And Doug's like, yeah, we'll do it. He goes, all I could do was just focus on his face. I couldn't look anywhere else.
Well, there was a similar story that happened at our place that was when Gerald Fisher was with basketball.
Yeah.
That he had to teach a class or had to do something. So he got one of the GAs to cover practice. And so Majerus, as you're alluding to, he'd go in after practice, he'd go into the locker room, and the first thing he'd do is he'd take all his clothes off. I mean, he just had to be naked.
Yeah.
And so this GA had something he had to go tell Majerus about. Some kid tweaked an ankle or did whatever he did. And so he went in there, and he was in there for a little while. And he kind of gets kind of quiet, and then he walks out. He has to walk right by the men's locker room.
Yeah.
Basketball locker room. And the door's wide open. And he kind of walks by, and he's really quiet. And the athletic or the locker room's really quiet. And all of you hear is one of the players in there. They said, "Look at him. He just saw Majerus' shit." Because he said the guy was just white. It just stunned him. he never thought that would do that. And he said he just saw Majerus' shit.
That sounds like, you know what that sounds? That sounds like a Phil Dixon line. Is what I don't know.
Yeah. Oh,
you're absolutely right. I mean, goodness sakes, yeah. Because people, if they weren't used to that, I mean, they would get. He was obviously a very large man, but still, just oh my goodness, yeah.
Well, I was talking to Gerald one day. He said, "I'm going to try to write a book about Majerus." And I said, "Have you thought of a title?" And he goes, "No, not really." And he said, "Any suggestions?" And I said, "Yeah. How about The Naked Truth?" Because that would blend everything off. I mean, obviously, he never did it.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, Majerus, he is so unique.
No, so we had a kid here right when I'd probably been out here about 2 or 3 years, maybe 4 years. It was right. No, it was probably about 4 years because he was a transfer from St. Louis. So when Rick was at St. Louis, and I was talking to him. He was in there getting some treatment, and I was talking to him like, "Yeah, so what was it like playing for Coach Majerus?" "Oh, well, he was pretty hard on us. We ran a lot and all this stuff." I go, "Did he ever wear underwear underneath his shorts?" And the kid just shut his mouth, and he just bust out. He just started busting out laughing. It's like he got into a defensive. He's trying to show us a defensive stance one time, and we're all standing in front of him. And he got down in his stance, and his junk fell out of his shorts. And he goes, "We didn't know what to do. We didn't know whether to laugh or say, 'Hey, coach,' But he was just coaching them. He didn't even know. He didn't, and if he did, he didn't care." Yeah. So he goes. He showed us how he wanted to do it. He popped back up. It kind of slid back in, and away we went. We went on with the rest of practice, and we didn't talk about it until we got in the locker room after practice. So,
well, I remember running into a good friend of Nancy's, a gal that she told a story where she was at Einstein's here in town, getting a bagel in the morning. There was some big fat guy sitting out on the grass in front of the store, kind of almost laying down.
Yeah.
And she goes, "Well, that's kind of weird, So he's over there. He's got this sack of bagels, and he's just grubbing, And she said it took my breath away because as soon as I walked by him, one, I saw who it was, and secondly, I'm looking at him, and all his junk's hanging out. He's got balls of this and that all sticking through his gym shorts. Does he give a shit? No. And this gal said it was so embarrassing because he had stuff hanging out all over the place. And I'm going, "That's our coach."
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't make him move because people are losing their appetites on the way in.
No. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that I don't think a lot of people knew, but very well versed, very intelligent.
Oh, great!
Could have a conversation with anybody, and so, one of the things that I want to talk to you about too is that when you were at Utah, you were doing football and men's basketball at the same time up until obviously Gerald kind of took over for you. Probably was that right before I got there as a GA then?
Yeah, that was when Nancy was mobilized to go to Iraq.
Right.
And so she had to obviously go into the army, and so
right.
We had a 1-year-old.
Yeah.
Obviously, I couldn't do basketball and football and this and that, so I went to Chris Hill, and I said, "This is the dilemma I'm in." And he said, "We got your back, Bill. We got you covered. You do what you got to do to make sure you got men's basketball taken care of, and if you have to leave early in the afternoon at 5 o'clock or whatever to go pick your boy up,
yeah,
do it. We got you covered." And they did. They were wonderful about the whole deal. And so, but that was those are stories of their own. But it was enjoyable.
Yeah,
I mean, they really looked out after their people.
Yeah,
and I hope that universities do that now.
Yeah,
they still take care of their people.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's very much old school. Even back in the 80s and 90s when that was going on, I mean, they were just starting to transition into having somebody separate with that. I'm sure there were times that you're probably were thinking as much as, and we're talking about the old whack. We're talking about you're going to Hawaii, you're going Colorado State, and you're doing that with football and basketball. So,
but you also have to keep in mind is during that era, the summers you pretty much had off.
Yeah.
All I had to worry about doing is opening up the training room to go in and do inventory when I got a supply order in.
Okay.
And I'd lock it back up, and then I'm gone for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
and as you know, you just don't do that now.
No.
I mean, you're there for, when the crow's crowing.
Yeah. I was in at 8:30 this morning and stuck. They had some individual workouts that went until and Friday's it's a lot lighter. They really only had one group going, but that went till like 1:30. So yeah, that's a summer. Yeah, that's a summer.
There isn't one anymore.
No, not. I mean, I'll have a couple weeks off here. After this they got one more week of basketball. And then I'll have a couple of weeks off before school starts. And I took 1 week off in July because I had to burn vacation days. So, you have to, now you kind of have to schedule things out with that a little bit. So, so I'm going to catch up here a little bit further in your career. But one of the best stories I think you ever told me, was when I was a GA, there was the Jim Fossil Hawaii story. Can you share that with us?
Was that the one where he changed the practice schedule?
Yes.
it was absolutely brilliant. So he was figuring, we started practice at about, what the hell time was it? It was like 8 or 9 at night. We started practice.
Yeah.
Football. And I said, "Coach, why are we starting so late?" He says, "Well, our game's at a different time frame, and so I've got to change this around so our guys, they can acclimatize to this time change. So when we go out to Honolulu, we're going to be able to play and we'll be good. This is going to be a winning thing for us." So we get out there and we get the guys on the field and they can hardly keep their heads up. They're all damn tired. They couldn't say away. And Hawaii just kicked our ass. Said, well, Jim, that worked really well for you.
No, because at one point in time you were practicing like at midnight, weren't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like everybody was just going, "Oh, what are we doing?"
I told that story to the head coach, the basketball head coach here. He was like it was his second year, I think. It was his first year. His first year at Utah or at Ball State. We played out there at Utah, and he was gonna do like, we're gonna practice at this time because it's gonna be Utah time and stuff. And I said, "Coach, we're not gonna be out there long enough for those guys to even think about becoming acclimatized to that tip-off time. They're gonna get off the plane. They're gonna go to their hotel room. They're gonna go to sleep. They're gonna get up. We're gonna go to shoot around. We're gonna go play this game. We're gonna get on the plane the next day, and we're flying back to Indiana. We don't need to do all this. Are you sure? And I'm like, yeah. Now, granted, we still got beat by the Utes, but
that wasn't the reason.
Yeah, that wasn't the reason exactly. Because I think that's the perfect example of a head coach overthinking the situation way too much and just tripping over themselves to do that. And I've never forgot that story that you've told, because I mean, how many head coaches are sitting there, they're contemplating these things, and I'm like, listen, just go play. Yeah, the kids are resilient. They'll be okay. Just go play. You'll be fine. Yeah.
No, they overthink it.
Yeah, no doubt. So as we go, as you know, as you've progressed through your career from Utah being, a WAC school to, by the end of your career, now we're playing for, we're in your national rankings in football. Everything's really starting to ramp up from a standpoint of television appearances and big time stuff and All-Americans and all that stuff. What kind of crossed through your mind as you're getting there about, did you ever take a moment and stop and go, how the hell did I get here? Did you ever have a chance to do something like that?
Well, we kind of did, but I think where I approached it from was back in those days that you were here.
Yeah.
And we all lived in that world that, I mean, you wanted to get a gator to help cover sports out on the field, just to carry your water around.
Yeah.
Well, there's not enough money in the athletic department. You can't get a gator. You can't get shit. And so you try to get donations. You try to do whatever you could do to try to get stuff. And now, I my last couple of years there, I'm kind of looking around, talking to Trevor and this and that. And I mean, it's almost, I'm not saying that's carte blanche, but
right.
They've got the things they need.
Yeah.
Because going on board with the Pac-12, they had those operating funds that you could take care of your athletes.
Right.
And do it with some fashion. And so that made it so much different.
Yeah.
The other thing is that we had the opportunity to help our students, then our undergraduate students, and then later our graduate students, with tuition stipends and being able to pay them some money every month.
Yeah.
Because we knew they put in as many hours as we did, the graduate students. And I would always talk to administrators. I'm saying, let's paint this picture here. We need these guys to help us function.
Right.
And we also need them to help secure safety for our athletes, that we have good care for them. And something comes up, we got somebody out there that knows, a little bit more about it than just some slapdick off the street that knows how to pour water in somebody's mouth.
Yeah.
And, and they did. I mean, they cleaned it up. Well, it's taken a step back now. With all the graduate students now not in programs, what's going to happen to us if this Pac-12 thing changes?
Yeah.
And we move somewhere else? Is that money going to go away? I don't know. There's a lot of question marks there.
Yeah.
But I really feel sorry for the full-time athletic training staff, you included, that, I mean, especially in football, hell, we used to have, we'd have 10, 12 guys out on the field, guys and females, helping just water down the athletes.
Right.
Keeping eyes on them, make sure we got ice for them. We got, that went away.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely, and for us, a mid-major, a mid-major with administration and especially football coaches mentality that we're like a Pac-12 school in some ways. That's what they want it to look like, and there's just not any resources to do that, and so therefore a lot of expectations don't get met, and then that makes somebody mad, and then there's a lot more questions than there are answers, and
then they're pointing the finger. Well, you're not doing your job, Troy.
right.
Well, guess what, coach? Give me the tools to do my job.
Yeah. I've worked harder in the last 3 years when I didn't have any students. And in some ways I didn't mind it because, I knew it was going to get done the way I wanted it to get done. But there were times that I'm slugging, on a road trip, I'm pulling kits and slugging stuff around. And this is before I had my surgery, my heart surgery. And I'm like, what am I doing? I'm 50 years old and I'm a pack mule more than I was when I was 40 years old or 35 years old or whatever. And it's college athletic training has definitely become a young man's game, with a few guys that are still hanging around like me that are still trying to figure it out in that capacity. But it is interesting that you talk about how much changed very quickly because of TV money or conference affiliations or something like that, that you almost, it like you said, it's not carte blanche, but you certainly didn't worry about the fact that, gee, can we afford this? Because most likely you could, or if the athletic training couldn't afford it, then somebody would want it. Football wants this, so they're going to pay for it, or basketball wants this and they're going to pay for it. Or two other, soccer and gymnastics. I mean, especially at Utah, gymnastics wanted something. Yeah, go get it. Whatever you want to do. But you're right. It seems like nowadays that things, bells and whistles, what looks good on social media, those types of things, they'll spend money on. But expertise, manpower, and experience, they're still kind of like, well, I can pay somebody cheaper to do this. And that's not as valued as the things that the bells and whistles that look good type thing. And unfortunately, I don't know what the answer for that is either, but it may come back around. Or like I said, there's going to be some really good high schools, these hospitals that are, like we talked about before, that are paying better, are going to get some really nice experienced people to take care of some high school kids. And those will be the beneficiaries of all that stuff and appreciate it and whatnot. So, but
I remember in my early days, we had one of the Cadillacs in college sports was the University of Washington, as far as their athletic training program. And why everybody kind of looked up to them some is that their medical staff, i.e. docs and athletic trainers, were all hired by the medical system, the hospital in Seattle. And so they were responsible to staff and equip all the training rooms. And it was invaluable.
Yeah.
And I don't know where that went. I don't know if that went by the wayside or it became too expensive or.
Yeah, there's you almost, to do a medical model is what they call it. You pretty much have to have a medical school at your university and some type of sports medicine fellowship to pull that off. Because we had it when I came back to Ball State. We had a family practice sports medicine fellowship here in Muncie, and so we had all sorts of docs. We had, at least when it was in full swing, we had at least 4 primary care sports medicine fellows. 2 that were going out, 2 that were coming in, and then all of our orthopedic docs and whatnot. And there was talk about putting those athletic training salaries with that physician group, and then they would come in and work at Ball State. But I think at the time we kept having turnover of athletic directors, and then we started getting athletic directors. Well, one of them was Bubba Cunningham, who's at North Carolina now. And they were kind of being up and coming athletic directors, and they didn't want to make the head coaches mad. And if there was independent medical decision making away from the athletic department, then that was going to affect the head coaches.
I was going to get them all spun up.
Exactly. Yeah. And so therefore it never got off the ground with that. And I think that's a thing right now where if the NCAA has said, you need to have an independent medical administrator, but honestly, that's window dressing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It looks good that you have these people, but are they making independent medical decisions with a physician? No, they're not. It's all still head coaches and stuff that are doing that. And yeah, again, you have some good head coaches that get that, but you have other head coaches that are they're gonna control everything and they're gonna run the show, and that's what's gonna happen. So, but that's where
nature of the beast, isn't it?
yeah, it is. And it's just it seems like it's got more and more out of control, even at our level, with different types of things and different institutions and stuff too. So, well, listen, we've gone an hour and a half here, pretty close. So, so, is there anything that, I always ask this question too, is there any advice? You kind of gave some really good advice at the beginning of the podcast, but if there's any advice you'd want to give to a young medical professional out there, not necessarily an athletic trainer, but it seems like, you've kind of encompassed all this stuff, and we really didn't even get to talk about team physicians at Utah, the characters that have been team physicians at Utah. but maybe we can have you back on and do another podcast. We can talk about that stuff too, because I always thought it was we were lucky to have really good team physicians even when I came in as a grad student. But any advice you give a young medical professional out there with all your years of experience and all you've done and stuff?
Well, I'm obviously preaching to the choir here, but you got to have exposure. You've got to get out there, and don't have anybody sugarcoat it for you. You sit down and ask questions.
Yeah.
And don't just put in, a 45-minute morning and you're done for 2 or 3 weeks. You got to spend some time in the gutter and find out, do I or do I not want to do this?
Yeah.
And there's good parts to it, as you know, and there are not so good parts. You got to be able to deal with both of those.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is getting to know you and having you as kind of a teacher mentor for me has always been one of the best parts. And I've been so fortunate in my career to have some really good ones. There's no doubt, but you've always been that one that I learned a lot from, and I can't say enough about that. So I appreciate you coming on the podcast. I appreciate you talking. I hopefully we had a good time. I promised you it would be.
So, and it really fired up a lot of fond memories.
Yeah.
How much I did really enjoy those years.
Yeah, and you're gonna remember about 5 different things when we get done here, and go, oh man, I didn't talk about that.
So, yeah, but you know it all anyway. I mean,
yeah. Well, that was some of the best 3 years, and and again, I'll end this with this. I mean, so. I mean, those, this, but our audience doesn't know this, but I go out to Utah amongst the concerns of my mother, because she was scared to death that I was going to marry some Mormon girl and never come home. But I remember going out there and everybody's like, why do you want to go out to Utah? They don't do anything out there. They don't drink beer. They don't do that stuff. And I just finished up at Ball State, which of course we did a lot of that there. Yeah. And I remember you telling me, I get there and, hey, we're going to Price, Utah. You can park your truck in my garage, just find a place to live, throw all your junk in there, pack up for 2 weeks at Price, and let's go. Okay. I didn't know any better. I'm just going to do what you told me to do. And so I remember riding down in that I think it was a Ranger, Bronco, whatever it was. And we get off the interstate and we hit on US 6 down there to Price. And you're like, hey, reach in the back of that cooler there and hand me a beer. And I went, wait a minute, hold on. They said
I'm where I want to be.
This is where I want to be at. Exactly. I went, holy smokes. I'm in Utah, and they said I wouldn't be doing this here. And here I am with the guy with my boss going to Price, and we're sharing some beers.
Oh yeah.
Going down to Price. Fun. Yeah. Road Cokes. Hand me one of those Road Cokes out of back there. And I went, Road Cokes. Holy smokes. Not kidding. So no, it was awesome. Those 3 years I was there was absolutely awesome, and
they were wonderful. I mean, and there's a lot of those dark stories that we all have of that, our participation down there, that are select to certain groups.
Yeah, no, and it's okay. Those are not places for podcasts.
They're so funny though when you start talking about them. You know,
Yeah.
he's just like, and Ronnie McBride just fueled it.
Oh yeah,
because he always had he'd always play the big guy like he's pissed off at us because we're playing poker. Well, as soon as he got the kids in bed, he's right there playing with us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he was beautiful.
Oh yeah, we've gone off the roll with Bill Bean. I want to thank Bill for coming on the podcast today. It had been a little while since we had a chance to talk, and so it was a treat for me to kind of catch up on things a little bit. We talked a lot off the podcast on some things and catching up on those things. So I hope that I won't wait as long to reach out to him and talk to him again. Some great stories. There's a lot more. And like I said, I'd love to have him back on and kind of go over some of the other stories that he has. We really didn't even touch on some things that we both have shared in our experiences as athletic trainers. So hopefully we can do that again on the podcast. So I want to, again, thanks, Bill, for coming back on. And like I said, if you have any feedback, reach out to us on offtherollpodcast@gmail.com, or reach out to me on my Facebook page for any comments on any of the podcasts. That would be great. Hope everybody has a great day. Thanks for listening.